Hello and welcome to the Film Angle. I'm Alex,
And I'm Kris.
and today we're going to do a little bit more movie news. Just because there's been a few developments in the movie world, and recently we had San Diego Comic Con, which allowed me to kind of nerd out, and
Oh,
also,
this is like your wet dream, Alex, isn't it?
well, I think it once was. I used to stay up late and literally just kind of like find any kind of illegal live stream I could of the panels when they were taking place, or I'd just be following Twitter for updates to find out, what's Marvel gonna do next? What's Marvel gonna do next? But as we've kind of figured out from the last couple of episodes, we're in a little bit of a Marvel down spiral at the moment in terms of our kind of motivation for the franchise. So it was a little bit different this year, but I thought it'd be interesting to talk about a few things. But also, your sister got married, Kris. It actually went ahead, and you kind of haven't. You've had a busy life. So,
You sound
uh,
surprised.
well, we did talk last week about the potential of it not happening. But yeah, obviously,
No,
you haven't had as much time this weekend to catch up on movies.
no. Recovering from a pretty severe hangover, followed by a flight, then starting work again on Monday. So yeah, it's been pretty hard to find any time to squeeze in any movies where I can. But you know, it won't take long to get back on the saddle, I'm sure. But
No,
yeah,
no.
I did manage to catch up on the Grey Man though, and we've got some there's interesting stuff to say about that.
Yeah, so that does lead me into like the first piece of news. The Grey Man dropped on Netflix the other week, and there was a lot
Hmm.
riding on this film for Netflix because Netflix are in a little bit of a spot of bother. I would say I don't know if it's trouble or anything like that yet, but they are losing subscriptions, and
Yeah.
each kind of financial quarter, I don't know all the ins and outs, but basically their stock is starting to drop, and they've had to kind of
Uh-huh.
reassess how they're doing things. They've been laying off a lot of people, and they've been looking at the programs they're making and films they're releasing and going, what do we keep, what do we not? They famously, I would say famously, it was very recently said that they said we can't do vanity projects like The Irishman anymore, which I thought was hilarious considering that The Grey Man dropped this week and is their most expensive film, $200 million budget.
Wow.
And
It's is that like going back on themselves? I think originally like with the Irishman, like that's a prestige picture. And I think they were trying to go into the prestige like Oscar nominated category. And now are they now trying to break into that sort of Marvel Disney market now? We're like, right, we're gonna make big, dumb $200 million movies and try to get a $1 billion like return on them. I don't know how the economy of that works, but sure, I think they're trying to replicate that, and they're struggling to find that middle ground.
yeah, I guess it's like they're trying to find a broader audience. Here we've got a, pretty actiony thriller with a bit of James Bondy born supremacy ness to it. But
It's a Frankenstein.
I just think it's funny that they had the audacity to call The Irishman a vanity project when they spent £200 million on The Grey Man, which maybe is like a review in itself that I'm that surprised. But at the end of the day, I did enjoy The Grey Man, but I don't think it was amazing, and it definitely did not look like a $200 million film.
Oh, hell no.
Like
Yeah,
it
those
just,
action scenes are pretty choppy.
yeah, definitely, and especially at the start when they're kind of running around Bangkok doing things, fighting things, and in fireworks, and it all looked very janky and not great. Clearly, they
Very
must have
smoky.
very smoky, a lot of smoke in the film. It I For me, it was very much like an amazing cast with Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, Anna de Armas, uh, Jessica Henwick, like brilliant,
Yeah,
brilliant people. Your guy from Bridgerton.
yeah, yeah. I was just gonna say, had Anna de Armas playing the older version of Dora the Explorer here.
Oh, is that how you saw her? I thought she was just
I
playing like
couldn't like.
a very similar version to her character in the latest Bond film, just like yet another spy.
Well, I just felt it's good now. Like we've got Dora the Explorer in all sort of major stages of her life. We've had her as a kid, as an adolescent, and as a full grown adult now.
But yeah, I mean, like it was a relatively decent action film. I don't think it was anything special. But they have now said that it's getting a sequel and a spin-off. And do you think it's worth it?
Absolutely bizarre, in my opinion. I know this movie is kind of critically, it's mixed at best, in terms of how it was received. Um, it would make sense if that was the case and the audience still loved it, but it seems like the audience, the major audience that have been watching this movie on Netflix, feel exactly the same way. So it's
Mm.
pretty bizarre that we're getting something about a big major franchise starter in a film that nobody's really that excited about.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But I think it depends who watches it because at the end of the day, it's not
You know
always
what?
about who who's the critical nature of it. Do you know what the biggest film that Netflix have released their own original film that racked up the most amount of views in 28 days?
I can't think.
It's Red Notice. Ryan Reynolds, Dwayne Johnson, and Gal Gadot.
That, it makes sense. I know there's a reason why, and it's to do with the packaging. It's how digestible these movies are. You see a title like The Grey Man or Red Notice, you see the actors who you know they're for action movies, etc., and it's easy to click it on it. Your dad or your mum or anybody can click on it on a Friday night and switch off. And I think that's it. And they won't care how bad it is. They would have watched it anyway. I think that's what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, I mean it's Ryan Reynolds, The Rock, and Wonder Woman, and I think that was enough to sell it. That being said, I found the trailer utterly tiring and boring, and I have not seen the Red Notice, and I kind of refuse to at this point. I don't know if I'd have wasted my time on
I have
it.
a moral standing on the Red Notice.
It's supposed to be so bad, but again, they're dropping a bunch of money on making a sequel and stuff like that. It
Mm.
got 364 million views in the first 28 days. I'm not really sure how that racks up to uh, money in box office. Say there were that many, but I mean, it would never have gotten that many views. I'm sure had it not been
The
available
model,
in
the
your
business
theaters.
model for tracking the business model for tracking the success of these things does not exist. I mean, we think about last year's big hit Squid Game, which is obviously is a TV show, but you know, there why that particular show and why does that just the word of mouth thing and the trends online, there's no it's so hard nowadays to kind of get a grasp on what the market's after. And I
Yeah.
think Netflix itself is struggling to understand that it's as well.
Well, they don't advertise half their films. Like we spoke about it previously with Apollo 10 and a half. Like you've got Richard Linklater doing a Netflix original film and with
But
minimal
I
marketing. And then could you find it now on your Netflix? Like
Yeah, but
they don't
I think
not show
90%,
things.
90 to 95% of people who are logging on to Netflix don't care about the new Richard Linklater film or even know who that name is. And they know that people like us will look out for it anyway. So I think they just don't want to spend, they're pretty tight and they don't want to spend the resources on something that's not going to really do them well. And at the end of the day, they are money oriented company.
Yeah. Yeah. They're an interesting company, Netflix, and obviously they're a little bit worried at the moment with the way things are going. But I think it was inevitable that they would have a spike during the pandemic. Obviously, they couldn't account for the pandemic at all, but there would be a spike in a situation like that where everybody's at home, and then obviously when everybody goes back to work and kind of
Yeah.
life returns to some form of normalcy. Yeah, you're not going to need it as much in inflation and rising costs of everything. Some things have got to go, and I must say, Netflix is one of the least used streaming services I've used this year, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. There's some things like it knows it has you over a barrel over some of its big hitters like Stranger Things, etc. But yeah, it's gonna really try to ride those big products for as long as it can because that's the only I think the only big reason why people are subscribed. And obviously the platform is also getting a lot more expensive on a pretty rapid rate. So I think
Yeah,
that affordability is a big thing for people.
yeah, 100%. And I know Disney Plus are a lot cheaper at the moment than Netflix, so and they're doing pretty well with their
Mm.
kind of blockbuster releases coming out pretty fast, and upscaling with TV shows and stuff. So
Yeah, absolutely. But all those things have a time limit on it too, and I'm sure Disney eventually will follow suit. Also, it's just the natural order of these things.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All right, we'll move on from The Grey Man and Netflix. And if you'll allow me to be a bit of a Marvel nerd for a minute, Chris.
Okay, I'll just put on my sleep timer. You just press my alarm button whenever you're done. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
No, no, I'm really interested. We're not going to get too nerdy here, but we're definitely going to delve into this a little bit because there's a lot of, as you said, exciting news that's came out of Comic Con.
Yeah, and I want to kind of mix it up a bit as well with some other maybe like less exciting stuff. But just indulge me for a minute as I chat Marvel. Just very quickly,
Consider yourself indulged.
the Black Panther Wakanda Forever trailer dropped. We're in a bit of a Marvel drought at the moment. There's a lot riding on that film to kind of bring maybe just you and me back into the Marvel universe, but also respecting the
Yeah,
passing, respecting the passing of Chadwick Boseman, and kind of figuring
of
out what
course.
you do with that character and the characters within the film, and kind of move that forward. I would not want to be
Yeah.
Ryan Coogler, the director, right now because that is quite a daunting job. However, that trailer is a pretty remarkable tease for what looks to be a rather astonishing film from Marvel. Could it bring us out of that little drought that we're in at the moment?
Yeah, that's a good point. No, I think if anybody was going to steer it in a right direction, I think Ryan Coogler is a safe bet. We've seen him deal, obviously, with the first Black Panther movie, and sort of just the sort of class and the prestige nature that he brought to the film. Obviously, Black Panther being the only Best Picture nominee to ever come out of the Marvel MCU universe. So I think it looks pretty cool. I think the vibe of the trailer, it seems to be very in respect to the recent passing of Chadwick Boseman, and has a lot of similarities to, like, it kind of gave me like an Avatar James Cameron vibe in terms of how, like, its scope. There seems to be
Mm,
like a lot more creatively going on than I even expected there to be.
yeah, was that just because you saw blue people?
I saw a lot of water, a lot of water.
So a lot of water. You saw blue people, and you're like, "Is this a James Cameron film?" But no, I
Okay,
get what you mean. It looks really visually interesting as well, and I think there's a lot of visuals that look like they could just be ripped out of a James Cameron film as well. I am only teasing.
yeah, yeah, you're pinning me over as like some simple person here.
No, no. Have you seen that tweet? The kind of viral tweet that was like, only ever seen one film and it's Boss Baby. Watch his second film. This is a lot like Boss Baby.
Yeah, it still baffles me that the Boss Baby is like a best animated feature film nominee, like a potential winner. It's crazy, but whatever.
Yeah, no, I
We're not
I
here to
haven't
talk
seen
about the
Boss.
Boss Baby.
Yeah, no, I've not seen the Boss Baby, so I couldn't tell you if it's deserved of that or not. Maybe one day in the future I'll let you know. But the other thing I was going to say on the topic of Black Panther, I'm not sure we've discussed it here before, but obviously Marvel have decided not to recast T'Challa, the original Black Panther, and decided to kind of
Oh,
move on within the universe as well. Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? And I guess the thing I'm thinking of is, touch wood, this doesn't happen, but Robert Pattinson dies tomorrow. They're recasting Batman straight away, right?
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure.
Oh,
How
come
much money
on.
did Batman make? Was it such a big hit that there's no option but to do that?
Yeah, no, they would recast him straight away. Come on. Come on.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think out of respect for Chadwick Boseman, they would definitely not do it for this movie. Also, because I think Chadwick Boseman is just so irreplaceable in that role because he really brings the regality to that performance, and also like he's just a frame that you can't replace. I think they've got so many different directions that you can go with Marvel that it would just be irresponsible and just sort of irrelevant just to recast something like that. We've been obviously teased that it'll be the role will be passing over to T'Challa's younger sister, for
Potentially.
whose character,
Potentially.
yeah, potentially. So I mean, that would be much more interesting narratively, and yeah, it would just cheapen, and it'd be a disrespect to Boseman if we went the former direction. I think.
Yeah, I was mainly playing devil's advocate there. I do agree that moving forward like this is
Oh, I know you
probably
were.
the best way, most respectful way to kind of break it down. Like as a comic book fan, it is a shame we won't see T'Challa. But you're
There's a
right.
lot more scope.
There was a gravitas to the role that Chadwick Boseman brought to it, and I think the kind of cultural impact that Black Panther had at the time on its release was huge. And for me, I was probably going through a similar phase with Marvel that I was now, where I was getting a bit tired of it. And Black Panther brought me straight back in. So I'm really hoping that come November, Wakanda Forever will do the same. But yeah, I think
I never knew that. I never knew like multiple times that you were on the cusp of giving up on Marvel. I've always knew you to be so excited for the material, and I thought it was just a recent event. So this has happened before. Then you in and out of love. It's like
yeah,
a love affair.
I think in and out of excitement. I don't like, you know me. I'm never gonna give up on the Marvel Universe. I will watch these films.
Oh yeah,
But it's just like the how excited are you for the next release? Um,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
think it's a good thing. I think that Black Panther, Wakanda Forever is the next release, because if it was Ant-Man, Quantumania, I would probably be a little bit more sour, even more so.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think this because this feels like the first time in a while that a Marvel movie feels like it probably has some, like you said, gravitas. It has a bit of meat on the bone. I mean, lately it's been a little bit jokey in terms of the tone, especially with the recent Thor: Love and Thunder, where we recently talked about. So it'd be good to see a Marvel movie that sort of takes itself seriously and probably has stakes and might lead into something a little bit bigger than just its insular self.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just dealing with the death of T'Challa in itself, probably within the
Hmm.
opening minutes, I imagine, is probably going to be a
Yeah,
bit
it'd
of
be
a
very interesting to see how it deals with that. Yeah.
yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be a bit of an emotional roller coaster, but it's also a film for kids. You can't just make it uber sad. So it's gonna be
That's something
interesting how
we
they
always
toe that
forget.
line. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting
Would you
how
say
they.
Multiverse of Madness was a movie for kids? That is a movie where a big demon monster gets his eye plucked out and a bunch of little demons turn into a mad wizard's cape.
I mean, if I was a kid, don't you think that sounds awesome?
Yeah, I would have been first in line for that, actually.
So there you go, different, different kind of kid. But I think that sounds pretty cool.
Cool kids
Um,
and lame kids.
we can't talk about Marvel, I think, without addressing some of the recent reports coming out. And whether this is a Marvel issue only, I don't know. I would say probably not, but it's very much been targeted towards Marvel, where a lot of VFX artists are coming out and talking about their experience working for Marvel. Not just one, but multiple now, saying they would never work for Marvel again. That some of them had been blacklisted by Marvel, but their working hours are just ridiculous. They ask for a lot in a small amount of time, changing third acts weeks before a film's release, and basically being underpaid and overworked. Um, and it sounds like a pretty hellish time. And obviously, Marvel now are just pumping out content. Um,
That's the problem, isn't it?
so but I think it's also worth saying as well, like we're both big video game fans, and you hear this a lot in the video game industry
Mm,
as well. Crunch
yeah,
times,
100%.
people being worked to the bone, bad working conditions, and a lot of games these days just get released and then patched up afterwards. They're not completed things because I guess gotta make the money for the shareholders and stuff like that. Like a lot of promises without much thought to the people who have to work on delivering those things.
Yeah, and of course, because these corporations are so big, and I imagine like at times people get lost in the big machine of things where their mental health probably isn't looked after, and like there's probably just one guy like stressing out going home to his wife every not his wife or his every night, just worrying about how to animate Doctor Strange's cape. It's probably, we're at that level, and there is a lot of parallels to the video game industry. 100% last couple of years, especially the, not to name any names, the big AAA corporations have had to really contend with worker strikes and issues on this sort of nature. So yeah, 100%. We need to kind of think about people like that a lot more, because they're trapped into doing work that is probably um yeah, definitely over the top.
Yeah, I know. I also feel like I would happily wait for a more finished and polished product. Like we
At the end of the, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that with video games, I almost wish they just didn't announce release dates so far in advance. I almost hope that one day they're just like, oh, by the way, the new GTA game comes out tomorrow, baby, and they just drop it.
Yeah, but it's greed though, isn't it? I mean, they rest so much on pre-order sales nowadays, and the only way you can really vote for these things to change, you vote with your money at the end of the day. If you continue to buy these pre-orders, or you continue to subscribe to that model, then they're only going to continue to do it. It's only whenever you don't and refuse to that they will actually change the scope of things. So we are partly to blame as well.
Yeah, I get that. I get
But
that,
movies.
but also the people who worked on it should get paid. So I mean, obviously, that not that they wouldn't get paid if we don't go, but you support films to keep people in work. It's a weird circle. I'm not sure how much to blame you can put on us when, at the end of the day, the big corporations like Disney and others are kind of the ones where the culture needs to change.
Especially when we're on a trend now, when before we were getting about 6 hours of Marvel content per year, and now we're sitting on like 40. So obviously, like we're just going from first gear to flipping 11th. So
Yeah.
the changes are obviously are gonna ripple throughout. Yeah, I just hope, just guys, we don't need so many TV shows, we don't need so many movies. Just, you're allowed to take it easy a little bit now, and maybe people will want your product a little bit better too. I mean, it exhausts me now to think that I have to watch like 6 different TV shows and 4 subsequent movies to kind of even just understand the new movie I'm going to go see. I mean, I can't imagine the people that get dragged by their nerdy partners or their family to go see these movies, and they're just probably absolutely lost. I feel for those people,
Are you
and
talking
it
about
shouldn't be
my
that way.
partner and my family?
I'm talking. Well, yeah. If it's prevalent with you, Alex, it's going to be prevalent with everybody. I had to like take Lauren for a crash course of Marvel last year, and originally she was quite resistant, and we got through them all, and it took a while. It took a while, and now to understand and to get to the current point where you can follow these movies in a proper thread line.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree, and I think like visual effects heavy TV shows as well, which they are producing. They're producing very film like quality shows. Maybe just tone it down and be like, oh yeah, we are a TV show at the end of the day. It doesn't have to
Yeah,
be so big and so grand, and hopefully that'll be the case. But obviously, this obviously leads into the fact that come 2025, we're getting 2 Avengers films in the same year, Chris. Avengers: The Kang Dynasty, which is being directed by the
great
Shang.
title.
Yeah, very interesting title. And that's being directed by the Shang-Chi director, Destin Daniel Cretton. And then Avengers Secret Wars, which is what a lot of us nerds assumed we were leading up to with all the multiverse stuff. Um, that hasn't got a director yet. But one's coming out in like
Hmm.
July, and then the other's coming out in December. Something like that. Something crazy. 2 like massive end game probably level events in one year.
Who's DP on that first one? Have we got Bill Pope back again from Shang-Chi?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. All they've announced at the moment is the director, I think. I don't think they've announced anything else. Um, but obviously, you'll have the first one dealing with Kang the Conqueror, who showed up, or a version of Kang showed up in the Loki TV show. So you are going to have to watch all these things, Chris. And then he's Kang the Conqueror is
Hooray!
going to show up in Ant-Man. So that's going to lead into the Kang Dynasty. And then Secret Wars is in the comics just a big, massive battle world where all the heroes fight each other and then another villain and stuff like that. So I'm sure it'll be an element of that and an element of something different. But
So
yeah,
I'm wondering how much more. The thing I am worried about, and sorry to go off topic, how much more of this multiverse stuff have we got ahead of us? Obviously, you being my insider on all this stuff, because that is I feel like that is the cusp of their problem here, where we're getting
I
more and more complicated.
definitely. And sometimes in the comics, they use big events, and they did use a few another version. There's been a few Secret Wars within the Marvel comics, but their most recent Secret Wars was a big kind of uh, timeline changing event to kind of streamline everything into one thing. So whether this does some resetting to status quo, I don't know. But then you are very much becoming as convoluted as the comic books are, and the comic books are not as easily
Exactly.
accessible as they once were.
You take away your sort of thread line, and you also take away the dramatic heft of things that happened before if you rewrite them and as if they never happened.
Yeah,
It renders previous films useless.
yeah. I mean, who knows if that is the case? But obviously, there's a possibility that that might be the case. But yeah, I'm not. I think there will be more multiverse stuff. Whether you get it in the solo film so much, I hope not, and just leave it for the big kind of Avengers cap off at the end of this fifth and sixth phase. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's two massive, massive, epic films in in 1 year. How do you feel about that? Do you reckon they could pull it off, or do you reckon that is truly going to be the end of like everybody's good faith in Marvel?
Well, they might be massive, but they might not be epic. um, yeah, I don't. Like I said, it all really, really rides on Black Panther at the end of this year as to whether we're really still on board, whether it's critically well received, and whether audiences really like it. Otherwise, I feel like the goodwill is probably on the downturn. I think
Yeah,
we saw it with Doctor Strange, even more so than Thor, surprisingly, even though I think Doctor Strange is a much better movie than Thor. So I don't know. I think the pandemic is a lot to blame. I think it's kind of there's almost like a chain, like a gap in the chain, since pre-pandemic and post-pandemic that sort of affected this. So maybe it's either we need to get back into the rhythm of what these movies are doing, or that we're at a point now where Marvel doesn't know what it's doing and it's kind of jumbling things up. Yeah. So we'll see. I think it's just how these next two movies go is a really big tell, especially box office wise.
yeah, yeah. I guess the box office numbers haven't faltered too much. I know. Thor. Love and Thunder had a bit of a big drop on its second week, but they're still making bank
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
I think a lot of that is word of mouth. To be honest, I think a lot of people have been telling their friends that it's not maybe as great as the other Thor movies, and then people are just being, "Oh, wait till Disney Plus."
Yeah, and they don't take long to jump on Disney Plus either now. Like even Lightyear comes out next week on Disney Plus. But anyway, one last film, kind of taking us back to Netflix here, but a trailer dropped recently for the Anna de Armas Marilyn Monroe film called Blonde.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
Blonde.
which
Yeah,
is directed by Andrew Dominic, and it's already apparently causing a lot of controversy within Netflix whilst it was being made. It's going to be an NC-17 rated film, which is quite, I think it's quite big for a blockbuster film to be rated so um,
is that the
adult.
reason why there was so many internal arguments in Netflix? Is it over
Yeah,
the content?
apparently Netflix think he's pushed it too far. or at least that was the rumor coming out. I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. But it's about to make its debut in the Venice
Mm.
Film Festival. We had a trailer come out and recently for it, and I think it looks really, really good. But it does raise an
Oh, it
interesting
looks visually
question.
stunning.
It looks very much along the same lines of like Spencer and Jackie in that kind of, we're taking some liberties with the artistic nature of this film. It's a biopic, but not really a biopic. And the film is actually
Mm.
based on a novel, which is a fictional retelling of Marilyn Monroe's life, but with a lot of elements of
Yes.
truth in
It,
there. So it's blurring the line.
less obsessed with the yeah, less obsessed with the details and more trying to get into the headspace of the human being. Very
Yeah,
similar to Spencer last year. Yeah.
but it does like kind of ask the question. Obviously, Marilyn Monroe is iconic, and she's been, heralded as this, like, she's more of an icon now than she was a human. And in her kind of short life, it is she's been heralded as this thing, as more of an object than a person. And is Marilyn Monroe, has she been done to death now? And is this film not helping? Because there's a line in the film that says, I've Marilyn Monroe, I've always been watched or viewed. I can't remember the exact words, but I've never been seen. And you just think like, well, here's another film kind of glorifying
Hmm.
her status once more. Should we just let her rest in peace?
Well, is that how you feel?
I don't know. Because I really like the look of the film, and I'm really excited to see it. And I think she's an interesting person. But at the end of the day, there is an element of like, put her to rest, man, because she's made more of an impact, I think, post death, because of the way we have used her as a society and as this
The
cultural
iconography.
icon than she was when she was alive. Even though obviously, a very brilliant actress, and kind of makes you feel a
Had
bit
interesting
icky.
charisma. I think, yeah, I think people are always going to want a definitive Marilyn Monroe slash Norma Jean movie just because of what we know about her today. Obviously, the tragedy of her death and how sort of sudden that was, married with her fame, her on-screen presence, how at odds it was with her real life personality. She was a really well-read um individual, very intelligent, very sharp. He kind of had to adopt a persona, so that kind of creates the perfect like turning to star movie and how someone is corrupted by Hollywood and by the flashing lights. So it makes a very interesting narrative. Also, we've never really seen a movie that really focuses on the headspace of her as a person. Usually, I mean, I'm talking about My Week of Marilyn is a quite an interesting film, but it's from the gaze of somebody else. It's the
Yeah.
perspective of somebody else looking at this person, and that's usually how we get to view Marilyn. We're usually very like outsiders looking in. So I'm very interested in looking, because I think Andrew Dominic is a very good filmmaker of getting into people's headspaces. We go back to his debut film like Chopper, which I'm a really big fan of, the assassination of Jesse James, and even more recently he's had success with This Much I Know to Be True, the Nick Cave documentary. So I think if anyone's going to really successfully tackle an intimate portrayal of somebody in a nightmarish landscape, I think Andrew Dominic's the guy to do it. So I've got pretty high hopes for it.
Nice. Nice.
So yeah, excited for Blonde. Obviously, it's like, what is it sitting at, like a 2 hours 43 minute runtime at the minute? So, and all the heart, obviously it's going to be, like I said, an N17 rated movie. So hopefully it's not too stylish and no substance, and we're getting too much of the icky stuff. I would really much rather see a beautiful portrayal of who Norma Jean was behind that mask. So yeah, keep our eyes peeled for Blonde. It's going to be a very interesting movie anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's gonna be an experience, I imagine. I mean, yeah, even Andrew Dominic says, if the audience doesn't like it, that's the audience's problem. Which I think he said
Oh,
maybe
that's dangerous when, yeah,
slightly less kindly than I just put it, but
That is, yeah, ego like that can be really dangerous. And usually when like directors and filmmakers are really blowing up their own smoke, usually those are the projects that are a little bit ugh.
We'll see. We'll see. Interesting. Very
We'll see. We'll
interesting.
see. I can't make any opinion yet.
Very interesting to see. The Venice Film Festival is shaping up to be an interesting one as usual. And as we get to
Oh,
the end of the year,
jam packed.
always a bunch of more interesting, less blockbustery style films coming out. And yeah, I always enjoy the kind of run up to Christmas whilst we get these films that kind of compete a little bit for the Oscars, or at least some kind of awards recognition. But usually they are pretty good.
Yeah, the thing that's so depressing about that part of the year, though, is like the fact that obviously being in the UK, and obviously we're not big film critics, so we don't get screeners. And America get movies like these prestige movies like 2 or 3 months before us. I mean, that's the only sting in the tail about the Christmas period running up to Oscar season is we're a little bit late to the game, but we've got loads of stuff on this back burner for this year, so I'm really really excited. So yeah, I think the best is yet to come.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I second your thoughts on all the UK releases. Always end up
Oh,
coming
it
in like
sucks.
January the 1st. And you're like, oh man.
I know. Sometimes it's like movies that were made over here, and like they still show them over in America first. It boggles my mind. We want to see your movies. Just play them here.
I guess that's the good thing about maybe a Netflix model and stuff like that is that, Blonde will drop on Netflix. It will probably have a very limited cinema release to qualify it for certain awards, and then it'll drop on Netflix on the same day as pretty much every other country, and we can all
Yeah.
kind of watch it and experience it that way.
Do you know why Blonde will drop?
Why?
Because Marilyn was a bombshell.
Yeah.
Cut, cut,
Can we
cut.
cut that bit, please?
I'm gonna do a loop of 45 minutes of only that joke.
Oh dear. It's the end of the film, Hank.
Right, I can see. Oh, yeah, yeah. I can see the film angle's own personal broom sweep boy coming in and sweeping that joke away.
Yeah. Well, Chris, that is about it for news. I'm sure there's a bunch more out there that I haven't mentioned, but these were the things that were most interesting to me and I thought would create interesting discussions. I just wanted to hear your opinions on. Sorry for nerding out a little bit in the middle there.
That's okay, and sorry for potentially bad takes and bad opinions.
Mainly just bad jokes on your end, so that's what you need to apologize for.
All right. I was going to kick the joke out. That means I have to keep the joke in for coherence. Thanks, Alex.
Brilliant. That's my sneaky way of making sure everybody realizes it was you who made the bet.
That I'm a fraud.
No, not a fraud. Not a fraud. Anyway, we get delirious as these things come to a close. So let's bring it to a close.
Could be the whiskey.
Oh. So that's it for this episode of The Film Angle. I'm Alex.
And I'm Chris.
Go like and subscribe, share the podcast, enjoy everywhere else, and tell your friends. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Maybe watch The Grey Man.
Maybe.